If you guys know what DDP was game planning for in the lead up to this fight versus Khamzat, please comment it below because I certainly have no clue. UFC 319, Khamzat and DDP. We'll talk about the main event first because there's not a ton of technical work to talk about. I mean, there is, but not anything that is I feel like talking about. However, we should have seen the signs, y'all. I'll just say it like that. We should have seen the signs that DDP doesn't have a ton off of his back if he is fighting someone who has really good top pressure and can keep you grounded. We saw the sign, or we should have seen the signs from the Derek Brunson fight. Derek Brunson had DDP on his back in side control, and the extent of DDP really being able to fight out of that really solid side control from Brunson was simply throwing his legs up almost like your legs are at a 90-degree angle with your upper body, and he used the momentum of swinging his legs down towards the canvas to sort of bench press Brunson off of him. Now, I don't believe it was a successful attempt, but I think they wound up scrambling and DDP got back to his feet. However, this is a good sign that, by no means is this the escape work of a high-level tactician off of his back. And who knows, maybe Khamzat or his corner watched that and knew what they were supposed to do. Let's be honest, Khamzat was probably going to try to do that anyways. But again, just no answers at all. And if we're, we can talk about being on your back, getting caught in that crucifix, which is a tough position as it is to get out of. But also tons of footage of Khamzat getting folks in that back control position. Those of you guys who have watched any of the pre-fight work that I've done on this event, you guys know how much I've talked about that back control position. And much of the fight was Khamzat on DDP's back, DDP in that tabletop on hands and knees. And, pretty boring. Not a ton of work from Khamzat. And, understandably, it's getting a lot of people talking about, oh, that was a horrible fight. He sucks. He's a terrible champ, this and that. Just an FYI, shows how fickle fight fans can be, because these are the same folks saying, oh, this guy's unbeatable, and, putting out all these guys in under a round and all this nonsense. So if you are a fighter listening to this, there's never going to be any pleasing fans unless you give them exactly what they want. This is why I'm always a fan of what Mayweather said. If I go out there and I get into wars and I get into bloodbaths, who's going to pay my medical bills? Are you guys that want me to get into the bloodbaths going to be paying my bills? No. So if you're not going to pay for it, the best thing I can do is go in there, shut down all your work, and then go home healthy and safe to my family. So again, not to get off on this side, but if you're a fighter listening to this, just pay attention. Pay very close attention, because look how they doing Khamzat. That said, Khamzat, and who knows, is this a cardio issue of why he just basically coasted for a good bit? Could he have put a little bit more activity in? But again, I don't know that this answers the cardio question. Even though it went all 5 rounds, it's hardly a huge effort from Khamzat. So who knows why, but it tended to not be the most exciting fight that got fans super happy after the main event. That said, DDP's answer to the back control was reaching behind his shoulder and trying to throw some short shots. Not too much hand fighting, which is again super important. Trying to release those gable grips from around your gut. And again, those of you guys who watched the Corey Sandhagen versus Umar breakdown that I put out there, those 3 principles, nothing was shown. It's a real shame, because this is something, and again, if DDP works his way back and he gets a rematch, we'd like to see, hopefully his corner can adapt and adjust, or maybe it's a matter of having to get better training partners in the camp there. I don't know what the talent is like in South Africa, but who knows. Anyways, the extent of what we saw from that back control was Khamzat throwing some knees to the butt cheeks, to that low back there. Not a ton of submission threats, not much boxing offense from the back there, which, again, I think both guys need a good bit of work after this fight. So as far as the striking, and now this is something that is super important, because the striking, DDP was basically damned from the beginning. And we talked about this in the pre-fight analyses, how long-standing his stance and his structural habits are that basically gave Khamzat the takedown. Now, a lot of folks commented, well, why didn't he just sprawl? Where was his sprawl? His sprawl was non-existent. Well, okay, no, it wasn't non-existent. He was sprawling. However, let's talk about something long before the sprawl. DDP, again, it's a commonly known thing. He's ugly. And now this is where, and I was getting a little bit of heat for this before the fight, but again, when you are structurally and fundamentally not sound, there's certain things that you just cannot do. So, for example, if I am standing on my tippy toes, it is going to be significantly harder to stop a lineman, a football lineman, or forgive me if y'all watching this from Europe, I don't know, one of them rugby dudes that tackle you, one of these big brawly-looking rugby dudes. It's going to be way tougher for me to stop that football player or that rugby player from tackling me if I'm on my toes than if I am base down, having a low center of gravity in that squatted athletic posture. Now, we can all understand that, but now how does this relate to DDP? DDP, when he is defending shots, tends to straighten up, get super, super tall. So you throw a jab at him, maybe he parries the jab, chin is going to come up, and body is going to elongate and get tall. This is the equivalent of being on your tiptoes versus a rugby player trying to tackle you, versus a football player trying to tackle you. You cannot be on your tiptoes and defend a tackle. You cannot defend a jab, straighten your body up, and also defend a shot to your hips. And this is the story of why DDP just had zero answers. It's before everything else. It's before, hey, he didn't get his down blocks going. He didn't get his sprawl. He didn't stuff the head. This is all stuff that you first have to be in an athletic position in order to do. If you are not even in an athletic position, well, how do you expect to get any of those fundamental wrestling defenses going? And this is where I'm a firm believer that just because someone isn't getting got, that doesn't mean that the habits that they have are correct. They're still incorrect habits, and it's a matter of time before they get exploited. Anyways, these are why these types of stance, footwork, fundamentals are so important. Those of you guys who follow me on social media and on Patreon, you guys hear that I harp on these things so much, but this is a great example of why. Nobody would think, well, it's a stance, a structural stance issue that is contributing to why his wrestling is basically non-existent. But it all starts with that. Also, a lot of folks are like, he's I don't know why he's going for guillotines, and who knows what the order of operations were. It might have been that he knew he was going to the ground, so he tried to get these guillotine grips to see if he can make something work because he knew he was already going down. I don't know that. Again, I just kind of heard some chatter about it. Regarding that guillotine, and who knows if it was really a choice. It was just trying to make the best of a bad situation. But again, all of that starts with the stance, which unfortunately DDP was kind of damned to begin with, because he has, and this is it goes into another thing, and we'll touch on this with the Aaron Pico Lerone Murphy fight. But if you are doing so well with something, even though it's not fundamentally sound, you can get away with it so long. But if your coaches aren't getting on you saying, hey, look, like this, like you're winning, but this is still not good. If your coaches aren't getting on you for that, and maybe you're still, you're dogging all your opponents, you're dogging all your training partners, you'll let it rock. But now you have these long-standing habits. This is why it's so important to get with folks and learn from folks who are going to drill in being structurally sound to a point that you cannot, if you wanted to, put yourself in a bad position, because we see how dangerous that can be. Anyways, if you guys have any questions on Khamzat and DDP, comment it below. What are your thoughts? Where do you think DDP goes from here? Where do you think Khamzat goes from here? Because again, it wasn't a great showing from Khamzat either, and I think a lot of people understand now. And to be fair, Khamzat was never Khabib level in terms of ground and pound and things like that. He is much more of like floating, and if he gets to a good position where he can lock down that position, then he'll start raining down work. But he did float a lot more, tire the guy out, and then start putting submission threats in, then start looking for striking positions and whatnot. But anyways, comment your thoughts below. I'm very curious to hear. Let's see. Most of what I have is on the main card, but I do want to talk about Bysangor Sursakayev and Nolan, which was an amazing fight. I thought it was lovely, and I think it was something like 4 days notice for Bysangor, but also 4 days notice for Nolan too, having a new opponent. But it was great technical work from both guys. Again, we still have to watch a little bit more from both of them, but a good bit of back and forth. And one of the things, there's a few things, but Bysangor used a feint combination. Those of you guys who are boxing heads, Luis Ortiz, the Cuban heavyweight, he played this very well. I want to say it was against Razvan Kojanu or maybe one of the Deontay Wilder fights, but instead of feinting a single shot, so oftentimes we are used to feinting a jab and then throwing a right hand, feinting a left hook, throwing a right hand. What Ortiz did was feint an entire combination. And you see that when people have to react to multiple feints, it tends to get them to kind of shell up, cover up, be extra defensive, because we're not used to having multiple shots being feinted in a row. With my students, I call this like pre-fetal position. So before someone, falls on the ground and gets into a fetal position, it's almost like they're halfway there. They oftentimes they'll lose eyesight on you and very reactively throw their high guard up, and that's a great time, especially when they take their eyes off you to fire your offense. But Bysangor played this a couple times against Nolan on a cage, and it was beautifully done. Nolan, for his part, his collar tie and his dirty boxing was great at shutting down the offense from Bysangor. Those of you guys who are dealing with opponents who are trying to put boxing offense on you, but especially in MMA, who are moving their head as they put boxing offense on you, a great way to shut that down is to simply collar tie and keep their head in one place. When you collar tie with one hand, the other hand being free can start throwing your own offense, and also you can start kneeing from there as well. It's a great way to shut down these types of guys because it gets intimidating, but again, answers to everything, and Nolan had them. The spin elbow, guys, it's getting hot when you exit clinch. It's getting real hot. You have to be super mindful. It reminds me of, I can't remember the opponent, but Yves Edwards. It was on all the highlights back in the day several years ago. But Yves Edwards had back control on his opponent. Guys, comment below if you remember who that opponent was. You guys will know what I'm talking about. But he allows the opponent to escape his back control, and essentially the opponent is running away from Yves, and he goes for a back fist of his own because he sees Yves chasing him, and Yves runs a little bit after him and then throws like a jumping head kick, and the guy's back fist turns right into Yves' head kick, and he gets slept. So anyways, all of these spinning attacks exiting clinch, they're dangerous. They're super dangerous, but and you guys know from the evening, the spin elbow is becoming super hot. We had 2 folks get slept with it. Now, one of the things with Bysangor is, and I feel like some of these Russians who, Khamzat as well, I think Islam is guilty of this, but hanging out after your combos. When you guys get your boxing work off, you got to get out of there. And this is a similar story to Pico, who got in trouble, but there was a tendency of keeping your head on the line and not getting out intelligently, and that's a great time to get countered. And Nolan was really good. After Bysangor threw his straight, Nolan would just peek his head out and then fire. As soon as Bysangor was done with that committed shot, he would stay right there, and he was an open target for Nolan. Great work from both guys. I'm looking forward to seeing both fight again. Whether it's rematches or different opponents. Definitely looking forward to both technical work from both guys. All right, Carlos Protes versus Jeff Neal. This was a really, really good showing from Protes, and partially because Jeff Neal had a rough hand dealt to him. The having to close distance, there's always that potential that you can get sniped on the way in. Again, we'll talk about some of this stuff with Murphy and Pico. Jeff Neal, the low kicks were doing a really good job against Neal from Protes. Now, there's something to be mindful of with the low kicks. One, Neal is a southpaw. Generally, southpaws are going to be getting work in with orthodox athletes. with orthodox athletes, you don't see as much of the lead leg kicking the outside of the southpaw's leg, but just because it's not necessarily as smooth of a motion. But a southpaw facing another southpaw, that rear leg low kick that will land behind your lead leg, that is a much easier path to travel. Now add to that Neal had to be closing distance, so he's going to be a little bit heavier on that lead leg as he advances forward. And then add, Neal has a tendency, he stays very bladed, but sometimes that lead foot, the toes turn in a little bit, which makes it difficult for him to turn his toes out and lift his leg up to check the kick. So it was kind of the perfect recipe for throwing the low kicks and stopping some of that advancing motion. Protes also did a really good job with the knees, meeting him with the knees, and it wasn't exactly identical, but kind of looked. It reminds me of Diesel Noi. Those of you guys who follow Muay Thai, Diesel Noi knees are like dangerous tools. But walking someone into your knees generates power on two ends. Your knee coming up and out has so much power, but then also them walking into it is going to make it even more of a dangerous shot. And again, just a really good kind of like stuffing mechanism to keep them away from you. Protes also really high level work with pivoting out. Now, definitely the longer of the two athletes, but pivoting out, forcing Neal to miss, Neal going for the head, especially on someone who's a little bit taller and has that range on you. If you do miss and you're really trying to take their head off, generally you're going to lose that balance forward, and that's what happened. But Protes did a great job cutting an angle that was so narrow, just enough to allow Neal to kind of like a bull in a matador, just allow that bull to get right past you, and oftentimes was facing Neal's back at the end of those defensive maneuvers, which was beautiful work. Really good ring awareness from Protes as well. Jeff did do a good job when he had Protes on the cage a few times. Again, that Luis Ortiz feint combo we were talking about from Nolan and Bison. We saw Neal have a little bit of success with that. I believe possibly when Protes was on the cage. But now the next thing is the KO sequence. So this is something. So one, we have Neal, who is just trying to go forward to get close enough to put work in. He's going to run into a stabbing elbow from Protes, one of those vertical elbows, and you see him get pushed back a little bit. And this is one of the things that guys who are trying to get close to you, if you throw a technique that lands and it pushes them back, as soon as they can, they tend to immediately regain their balance and immediately start trying to stalk you and come forward on you again. This is almost like they want a little bit of revenge. Like, oh, he just got me with that? Okay, let me get right back in his face and try to put some work on him. And Protes played that reaction from Neal very well. He clipped Neal with the stabbing vertical elbow. Neal backs up a little bit, immediately starts walking forward, and Protes walks Neal right into that spin back elbow to sleep him. Really, really good work from Protes all around. MVP versus Cannonier. As impressed as I was Protes, this is how unenthused I am about MVP. I consider him like a lower activity Wonder Boy. A Wonder Boy who came from a similar base with the karate background, similar point karate type stance and things like that, but uses pretty much no karate, is very tall, very long, and tries to box and throws the one shot here and there. And if it gets you, it looks great. And if it doesn't, he'll just get right back to being long again. And, just pretty unimpressive, especially against Cannonier, who really didn't have much for MVP. Very low activity from Cannonier as well. He struggled a lot with range with Izzy too. There was one piece of footwork that I liked from from MVP. He was on the cage. He is in his neutraled up shuffling, and he shuffles to his right a little half step and immediately shuffles to his left as soon as Cannonier starts orienting to that rightward shuffle. And he immediately switches, shuffles to his left, and then throws, I believe, a right hand that clocked Cannonier clean. And that was nice. Just the directional switches are good work. But I will say MVP runs, and I feel like there's a lot of folks comparing him to Anderson Silva in his prime, hands down, moving the head, things like that. He is at risk, and again, a an opponent who game plans appropriately will get MVP in this position and has a great chance of completely sleeping him. He's at risk of doing what Anderson Silva did that got him knocked out by Chris Weidman. When he pulls, when he's in his head movement stage and he's showboating and trying to make you miss, when he pulls a shot, he tends to have a completely neutraled up gut. By neutraled up gut, I mean both of his tits pointing towards the person trying to punch his head off. When you pull and your tits are both pointing to your opponent, that forces you into a sort of like a yoga backbend position. And this yoga backbend has a finite end before you lose your balance. Whereas if you are bladed as you pull and you keep one shoulder in front of you, then you're essentially just doing a Cossack squat or like a Cossack lunge where you're lunging onto your back leg. And you can go way further back in that position. So as it relates to Chris Weidman and Anderson Silva, Weidman punched Silva as he was hitting that neutraled up pull and punched right through the pull and knocked him out based off of that. Either that was the knockout shot or that was one of the ones that set it up. Now, this is a danger of guys who like to drop their hands and use that length. If you can get past where they pull from that neutral stance, you're probably going to clip them. Pico and Murphy. So Pico is similar to Jeff Neal versus Protes in that he basically has to come forward to do his work. When he lands, those are great shots, but he tends to be static after he lands or closing the distance to the clinch. But if he doesn't close the distance, he has times where he tends to just stay right in front of you. And those times, similar to Bison and Nolan, if you stay in front of someone after you're done your work, it's giving them an early Christmas gift to clip you when you're done. And in addition to that, similar to that Neal fight, where you can also, if all you're doing is moving forward, you can get sniped on the way in. And Murphy earlier on met Pico's forward advance with that spin side kick, again, sniping him on the way in because he knows that's where Pico wants to be, is on the inside. And keeping the head on the line or in a predictable spot after you're done your work got Pico clipped a lot, not just with the elbow. He got clipped with, I believe, while Pico was jabbing, he kept his head on the line, and he got clipped with a counter jab. There's different things that a lot of people say great boxing, great wrestling from Pico. And yeah, there's the things that he does well, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily great, because if you're not defensively sound as well, what is great boxing? Oftentimes people just call great punching great boxing, but that's not the case. Now let's talk about the actual knockout sequence. Now, a lot of people were discussing several different parts of this, but here's something that's very important. You guys who follow my work know people talk about the switching footwork a ton, and that's like the hot, the IG, the social media talks about the switch game, and oh, here's 4 different switches you can add to your game, whatever, fine. However, the more important part than the actual switching, if that's what you do, then cool. If that's part of your style, good for you. But the more important part is, how are you prefacing it? Because at the end of the day, switching footwork is very movement intensive and it takes time. So you must do something to preface, or even do something during your switch to otherwise keep the opponent occupied. Pico shifted his rear foot out towards his right and got into a neutraled up position, but that's a big motion. If you're not distracting your opponent while you do that, they can do what Murphy did, was just watch you do that, watch where your head position was, and spin and elbow you. This same principle of what's happening versus what everyone talks about was really big when, do you guys remember when everyone was saying, oh, Lomachenko is in the Matrix because he does that floating pivot around his opponents. And so everyone in their moms was in the gym doing that little cute little floating pivot. Now, excellent piece of footwork, but look at the fight footage. Every time Lomachenko does those floating pivots, what is he doing to the opponent? He's forcing the opponent to high guard up and probably lose a line of sight on Lomachenko, and that motion is pivotal for allowing Lomachenko to, while he's super fast, take that high commitment movement of that floating pivot. In the same way, Pico needs to put some sort of distracting mechanisms out there so that he can take this high commitment step and not get seen the whole way and spin elbowed and slept. But again, what he does well, but that doesn't mean that there's not other huge holes. Anyways, guys, any questions, please comment them below. Patreon.com/boringbreakdowns. If you guys would like custom studies, they are on, you can check it out on the Instagram, the link in the bio. And I will catch you on the next one. Peace.